For this episode of Beyond the Stats, college basketball is returning. The NBA announces the MVP and our matchups of the week. But first, Big Ten. They're playing college football.
This is Beyond the Stats with Zach and Tanner.
Tanner, Big Ten football, it's back. After being canceled.
Yes.
Yeah, it was canceled before, but it's back, and they're playing starting the weekend of October 24th, so the 23rd and 24th are the 2 days they're saying they're going to play. I'm not surprised college football is back based off the fact that 3 of the other 5, or the other 4 college Power 5 conferences didn't cancel. Pac-12 being the only one that canceled, and Pac-12, as far as we know, is not coming back. They canceled all sports until 2021. So that could affect them for college basketball, which we'll talk about in a later segment.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yep.
It's interesting that the Big Ten, after deciding not to play, is playing. They already released the schedule before the season after they canceled it. So we should have seen it coming, but it's back. And it's interesting because the two thing that makes it interesting is when they voted before, all but 2 teams said don't play. And now every single one, it was a unanimous yes, let's play college football. So that could mean a number of things, but it's back. Yeah, what does that mean for the Big Ten and for college football?
Well, for college football, of all the teams that, when you think of the Big Ten in terms of recently, we both know this, it's Ohio State University.
Right.
Clearly one of the favorites, not the favorite in the Big Ten, but also for a national championship. You've got the likes, Alabama and Clemson and a couple other teams that could work their way there. But Ohio State, in terms of Big Ten, they get a chance to compete. We looked through, as you said, October 23rd, 24th, that
right.
weekend is when they'll play. The key thing is that they will complete their season, assuming they follow that format, before selection,
right.
giving them a chance, because before they had there was a potential that they could at least play in the spring. But I think, and the important part is that it gives certain teams, again, particular like Ohio State, maybe even Penn State or a couple other schools, it gives them a chance to at least go up in the rankings, or at least give them a chance to compete
right.
for that national championship.
Right.
So it's important for the Big Ten too, in terms of NCAA, the 2 major sports being football and basketball. You think of Big Ten for both of those. So it's kind of important that as a conference like the Big Ten with some big name schools that they were to play.
Correct.
And so, yeah, I'm really happy that they decided to. I completely understand beforehand as to why they wouldn't. And then I think they were kind of maybe either surprised, or other teams or in other conferences decided to play.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of ultimately helped them make the final decision. Of course, they definitely had to ask the athletes, because, their safety and their comfort is also very important, but they seem like they want to play, and I don't blame them. But I think it's a great move for the Big Ten, and most importantly for college football.
Yeah, to have football in the Midwest is pretty huge, outside of Maryland and Rutgers. Right. Every team is in the Midwest but Maryland and Rutgers. Well, Pennsylvania's also not in the Midwest.
They're close. They're definitely close.
Penn State's like right there, though. But I understand why. Yeah, football is back in this part of the country. The West Coast still doesn't have football, but that is what it is. But I think it's huge, especially for Ohio State. Obviously, the other teams also, but Ohio State is a national champion contender, the main one out of the Big Ten, and I think it's huge for college football, huge for the Big Ten if they have college football, and Ohio State gets to compete for a national championship. I think it boosts the Big Ten's appeal to recruits across the country if a team from the Big Ten wins. Particularly in this case, Ohio State is the one that we expect to come out of the Big Ten and compete, but who knows what will happen. The other thing I think that we should point out is the Pac-12 not playing. Does that push them out of the Power 5 conferences, making it a Power 4? Because they're not playing football this year, which will put them behind the 8 ball. It's been a while since they even sent a team to the college football playoff. They haven't sent anyone in the last 2 years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I think it's huge that the Big Ten is coming back, because I think it can shift the balance of college football even more east than it already is, as starting with Pac-12 not playing, the Big Ten playing.
And absolutely, and as we look at now, the opening matchups, it looks like the first one is going to be Nebraska at Ohio State, and then the other games, you got the Michigan Wolverines taking on Minnesota. Then you got Penn State University taking on Indiana University, Iowa at Purdue, Illinois at Wisconsin, Rutgers at Michigan State, and then Maryland at Northwestern. So we've definitely got a couple really good games, and I think the Nebraska-Ohio State more so. Nebraska trying to maybe get things off the right foot, but when you're coming back, playing Ohio State is not the easiest. But so that'll be interesting more so, with the Big Ten coming back, and for Ohio State to prove to themselves that they belong to get a shot at the national championship. But I think most entertaining, or I hope is at least, will be Penn State and IU. Penn State, of course, a very rich football program. Since they've started. And then Indiana University, kind of shocking but not shocking last year at the success that they had, and they're definitely looking to build momentum. They were actually, I could see one of the teams also that would have been a little upset if they couldn't play. More so just to kind of keep building that program. So I think the one that I'm in particular going to keep an eye on is Penn State and Indiana, just for the sake of, Penn State most likely will win, but Indiana could shock a lot of people with that, but a lot of great games to start off the Big Ten conference play.
Yeah, I have to agree totally. I think Big Ten football back means good things for football, means good things for college football, means good things for the Midwest. We're going to step aside. When we come back, we'll be talking about college basketball. This is Beyond the Stats.
Back to Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp, and as always, the one and only person that I love getting to talk sports with, Mr. Zachariah Begley. So, Zach, we got great news about the Big Ten coming back. Right now, it's looking pretty like it's confirmed that college basketball is going to come back as well. It looks like it's going to start around Thanksgiving time, November 25th. There are a couple other things to keep in mind, which I'll go ahead and read off. When it comes to recruiting visits, that is not allowed until essentially 2021, so January 1st. No scrimmages or exhibitions at all, which I completely understand. The regular season capacity in terms of games is only reduced by 4 games, which could make a difference, but at least it's not a huge number. And then as of right now, they said teams can practice as many as 12 hours per week starting on September 21st. So a couple modifications, but I think these are obviously to take into consideration that, obviously it was just insane to see that that March Madness was canceled. So they're trying to do everything in their power. Again, it looks like it's pretty confirmed, but of course anything could change from now until then. But when you at least hear the news and you hear all of these kind of modifications for college basketball coming up, what are the kind of initial thoughts, and do you think that with this, and at least from what you're hearing right now, it is going to be set and we will have college basketball in a couple months here?
I am giddy. Giddy. I love college basketball. I'm glad it's coming back. I mean, of course, everyone likes March Madness, at least to a certain extent. People will play the pick'ems for March Madness who literally don't watch basketball any other time of their life, and they get into March Madness because, it's great entertainment on top of being great basketball. Like, it is just genuinely good entertainment. You can't go wrong with March Madness, and you can't go wrong with college basketball. I mean, the storylines will be interesting. It comes back in November. They're only missing about 8 or 9 games, which really isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. So they're not missing very much basketball, which is I'm glad to hear. But I'm just ready for college basketball to be back. I'm ready to see what happens. There were some pretty big transfers over the offseason, and I'm curious to see how that works out. Purdue lost two players. They lost Nogel Eastern, who was Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year 2 years ago, and then they lost Matt Harms, their 7-foot center.
AKA the guy who adjusts his hair every single play.
Right, yeah. Matt Harms is always adjusting his hair. You're not wrong. But he's at BYU now.
Yes, yep.
Nogel Eastern's at Howard. So they're at different Division I programs. So what does that mean for Purdue? I mean, they're losing a couple big name players. Then Ohio, yeah. And then you have to look at Duke brought in the number 1 recruiting class again.
Really?
Kentucky, wow. Kentucky's always going to be good. I mean, just going down the list, there's just so much going on in college basketball.
I think with college basketball, kind of what we've seen, especially like, we're going to definitely see some surprises as we do, whether, before or after this, kind of like the NBA. I mean, if you would have told me that the Heat were going to darn near almost close to sweeping the Bucks, I would have never had guessed that. If you would have told me the Nuggets would have gotten rid of the Clippers after being down, that's kind of the exciting part of college basketball, is that the uncertainty. I mean, who knows? If Duke's first game, we could see them knocked out. Now, that's obviously unlikely, but I mean, you never know with their matchups. And then, as someone who's a fan of just basketball in general, there's just that, and depending on with the all-out fans or what their capacity will be in terms of number of fans, there's just that feeling of, I think a key word in college basketball is tradition. Like when I think of college basketball and rivalry, you got to put Duke and UNC, arguably not just one, if not the best rivalry in college basketball, maybe even in all of college sports and even of sports. So there's just that feeling of college basketball it's a completely different atmosphere. Like these are still, young men who are going against each other, and their one goal is to win because of nothing more than to try to get into March Madness, which everybody knows about, especially early on when you've got a couple games going on at a time. And then the ultimate goal of trying to cut down those nets and hoist a national championship. So I'm like you, there's just a different feeling to college basketball. And again, assuming everything stays as is, which it looks like it will, but obviously anything can change from here, even just in a couple weeks. But I'm like you, there's just a different feel of college basketball that a lot of people, I think, are going to be excited to see again.
Yeah, I'm ready to watch college basketball on Saturdays on CBS. That sounds right. And then, I'm just ready for college basketball to be back. I'm ready to see the uncertainty that happens because anyone can win on any night. They say that about all sports, but I think at least I feel on purpose. I feel like it's more true in college basketball than any other setting of sports right now, or really anywhere. I'm just ready. It's on top of it being such great sport play. It's just great entertainment.
Really excited for college basketball and hope we get scheduled soon because I cannot wait to find out which games I'm gonna be spending my Saturdays on, or basically any day of the week. We're gonna wrap this up, and when we come back, the NBA has announced both their MVP and their first, second, and third All-NBA teams. Once again, I'm Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley, and this is Beyond the Stats.
This is Beyond the Stats. Zach Begley, Tanner Camp. We're talking about the All-NBA teams and the MVP. We're going to start with the MVP real quick. Tanner, Giannis won his second one, back-to-back. The other interesting thing is he's the third player all-time to win MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same year, joining Hakeem Olajuwon in 1994 and Michael Jordan in 1988. I think that's an accomplishment in and of itself. People are surprised, I think, a little bit that Giannis beat LeBron this year. But, yeah, it's the first... To be honest, I thought LeBron would win, especially after the second round collapse of the Bucks. Even though it's a regular season award, I thought recency bias would sneak in and LeBron would win it. It's also his first year ever leading the league in assists. He averaged over 10 assists a game for the first time in his career, and I thought that would put him over the top. In year 17, leading the league in a category, but Giannis was good all regular season, so I'm not completely surprised I'm not shocked that he won. I'm surprised that he still found a way to get it over LeBron after what happened here in the second round of the playoffs.
And Zach, I think one thing is for sure, like in my opinion, the three candidates were Giannis, LeBron, and Harden. In my opinion, it was either Giannis or LeBron. Nothing against Harden, but those two by far were Giannis is the best in the East, and LeBron was the best in the West. And that is, I think, the part that I will admit, and I'm a huge Giannis fan and also a huge LeBron fan. One of the best ever, but the thing that kind of does upset you a little bit, out of 101 votes, LeBron only getting 16. That part I think is a little like, what? Like only 16. And we've seen it
should have been way closer.
I agree. And that's the part that I think if you're LeBron, you'd be upset with. And again, I do think I personally was going for Giannis. I thought he did. And I don't know what the big reason would have been. And maybe it's because LeBron had another superstar in Anthony Davis, and nothing against Chris Middleton or any of the Bucks players, but they're not as big superstars.
They're not Anthony Davis. They're not Anthony Davis.
You wonder if that's because you said LeBron in the passing. I mean, he was great. I mean, he had a lot of options to go to, and obviously particularly in Anthony Davis. But again, I do think he could have Giannis won. Got 85 out of the 101 votes for first place, but.
Right.
I'm like you. I would just wish it would have been a little closer because it made it. LeBron, I give props. He played absolutely fantastic, especially for how long he's been in the league. Yeah. So I agree with it being Giannis. I don't necessarily agree with the separation because it should have been way closer. And I don't know if they took the Lakers because then you and I know this. They didn't really play the greatest at first when they had the restart as a team. So I don't know what the big reason for the big separation was, but I do think Giannis should have won, but not in terms of the gap that there was.
The Bucks didn't play great on the restart either. They lost by 30 to the Nets at one point. Yeah. So let's not act like the Bucks were destroying worlds in the restart either.
Exactly.
And the thing that shocked me the most is the recency bias. And I give them props because it's a regular season award. The recency bias from the playoffs didn't slip in, and I thought it would. So I give props to the voters for not letting that second round playoff matchup affect their voting.
I'm like it could have. It really could have. So that's a good point.
Yeah. So I give them props for that, but I am surprised that the voting was as wide of a margin as it was, because LeBron literally led the league in assists. Did Giannis lead the league in any category? I don't know.
He was definitely up there in a lot of them, but not leading in any of them.
Yeah. So, and to be honest, I thought Luka should have been the third MVP candidate, not James Harden. Nothing against James Harden. He's one of the best offensive players in the league, but Luka nearly averaged triple-double and got a Dallas team that is just doesn't have as much talent. Yeah. Well, they also just aren't as talented full on as a Houston team.
Yeah.
And so I don't.
Also important to note that Luka and Kawhi were also Luka finished fourth and Kawhi finished fifth.
Kawhi finished fifth. Important to note. Right. That's important to note. But I think Luka should have finished third and Harden should have finished fourth. I think you switched them there. But Giannis won. Kudos to Giannis. It's deserved. I'm just surprised LeBron didn't find. I'm surprised they didn't give it to LeBron. Maybe they just don't want to give him 5 to match Michael. I don't know. That could be it. But to be completely honest, Giannis. I'm not going to argue against the Giannis pick. Looking at the All NBA teams, I guess we talked a little bit about before, and I think that's a sentiment a lot of people. Surprised Bradley Beal didn't make it. The thing, though, I think what hurt him is the restart. The Wizards actually finished lower than the Bulls, and the Bulls didn't make the bubble. And they did. So that might be part of it. Like they were really bad in the bubble. And I mean, it's not Beal's fault that it's Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal and Bradley Beal.
I think Bradley Beal's on that too.
Yeah. And that's not his fault. But
No.
I'm not, a part of me is not surprised, but part of me is surprised because the only reason they got to the restart is because of Bradley Beal. But again, they didn't play well in the restart. And there's just so many other candidates. I think he should be an All-NBA team at some point in his career. He's good enough to do that.
Yes,
but
he is,
I understand why he didn't make it this year, but I'm also shocked at the same time.
Yeah, and as I look through the teams, first team, no surprise. Those in terms of, I mean, those are the
right.
The first team is spot on the money. I think those were the
I
best
agree
in
with that
position. Honestly, that second team looks really, really good too. I mean, but I'm a huge Jokic fan, but Jokic and Siakam, golly, I can only imagine what that front court would do.
Yeah, honestly, if that second team was playing, like legitimately played, I mean, obviously they win a championship if it was real. Like, I'm not gonna act like they wouldn't. Between Kawhi and Giannis and Siakam, or sorry, not Giannis, Kawhi, Jokic, and Siakam right there. That's just, I think that right there wins you a championship most times. I mean, Kawhi and Siakam did it together already. Yeah. That's happened. So if you add Jokic is just a slightly more polished offensive Paul Gasol. Or sorry, Marc Gasol.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But no,
right.
For the second team, Zach, I think the one name that we have to give props to, because he was kind of going with CP3,
sure.
a second. That's good for him.
To be honest, he probably should have won first. He probably should have made the first team. That's the only thing. I think there's a really strong case that he should have made the first team, because you look at that the Thunder team. I mean, part of that is Billy Donovan coached so well.
They weren't even supposed to make the playoffs at first. They had a less than point. They had a 0.2% chance of even making the playoffs, and they almost came back and beat the Rockets.
Yeah, I mean, they forced a Game 7 with the Rockets, and honestly, they might have played the Lakers better than the Rockets. They might have. I mean, yeah, Chris Paul. I would argue Chris Paul is the only one that probably should have been on the first team that wasn't. They finished fifth in the West.
Fifth, yes, because the Rockets
fifth in the West, which is insane considering they were supposed to not make the playoffs.
Yeah,
they did. Not only did they sneak into the playoffs, they didn't even sneak into the playoffs. They handily made the playoffs. They finished in front of three teams. They finished in front of the Dallas Mavericks, the Trailblazers, and then I can't remember who was the 7th seed.
Dallas was the 7th seed because they played the
6th seed. Yep. Then the 6th seed. Who did the Clippers play?
So no, Clippers played the Mavericks. Lakers played the Trailblazers.
Blazers.
Oh wow. The Jazz. The Jazz played the Nuggets.
The Jazz. I mean, they finished in front of the Jazz, the Trailblazers, and the Mavericks. I'm just shocked that's what happened.
For CP3 of the first team, Giannis, LeBron, Harden, Davis, and Luka, who would you switch?
I'd switch out Harden. Yeah. I just think Luka was insane in year 2. I don't think how you can't put him there. Maybe Luka, if someone wants. Well, Harden was an MVP candidate, so maybe you put Luka over CP3. But CP3 probably should have been in the MVP vote more than Harden or Luka. To be honest, now I think about it, CP3 should have been 3.
We definitely saw some, when I think of CP3,
yeah.
I in particular, obviously his Rocket days, but also his Clipper days. I think of even all the way back to the New Orleans Hornets days.
I mean, yeah, well, Oklahoma City Thunder, CP3 was New Orleans Hornets, CP3.
Yeah, I absolutely.
To be honest. I mean, just the amount it took for him to force a Game 7 against a clearly more talented Rockets team. I think Oklahoma City is just a year or two away from really being a force in the West or being a team of relevance in the West. And CP3 was just like, it doesn't matter. We're going to make the playoffs. and they maybe should have made it out of the second round. I mean, yeah, I think Chris Paul should have been an MVP candidate more than James Harden or Luka.
Well, I definitely, as we kind of, get ready to wrap for the most part with these teams, as you said, with CP3 and even the third team, I can agree with the most part. Most of this I do. I mean, and you can always make arguments in certain cases, but I think in terms of the players being first, second, and third, maybe not their position of first, second, or third.
Sure.
The players that were there were the best of, were the best.
Yeah,
I
I can't disagree with that.
But no, so big props to you guys. We're still seeing a couple of them as we're in the Eastern and Western Conference Finals. And we will see how those big time players can perform as NBA slowly getting ready to wrap up here.
When we get back, we'll be talking about our matchups of the week. This is Zach and Tanner for Beyond the Stats.
Back here on Beyond the Stats. Joining me, as always, Zachariah Begley. I'm Tanner Camp, and it's time for our matchups of the week. Zach, you have the honors to open up. What you got for me?
All right. This is in not a particular order because I don't think they need to be ranked. I think all five
fair
are
enough.
Good matchups for different reasons. Starting off with the Stanley Cup Finals matchup with the Dallas Stars and Tampa Bay Lightning. I mean, it's the Stanley Cup Finals. I feel like that alone is enough of an answer. But I mean, game one happened and the Stars won. Yeah. So I think. Yeah, I don't think there's a better answer than really Stars versus Lightning. It's Stanley Cup Finals. I think it'll end up being a good series, even though Stars won won game one. So I'm gonna say we'll go in 6, maybe. Yeah, 6. My number 2 matchup is 2 and 3 are both
Makes
Eastern
sense.
and Western Conference Finals. Again, it's the playoffs. You can't go wrong with playoff sports. 2-1 in the East. I think the Celtics win game 4 and make it 2-2. And then I originally had the Heat in 5, but the Celtics showed up last night in a way that we haven't seen from them in game 2. So it makes me think that Marcus Smart yelling in the locker room did something. And it'll be the Celtics, and the series will go to 6 games. I still think the Heat are winning. I picked the Heat to win, and I still think they win, but I think it's 6 now instead of 5. And then the West, I think it's 5. I think the Lakers are just too good for the Nuggets. I think it goes to 5. And then my 2 other picks, which are not playoff sports, Yankees and Blue Jays. That series was really good. That series finished up on Thursday, and now they're playing again starting tomorrow on Monday. And I think it'll be another good series. A lot of offense in that series. Both teams are hitting the ball really well. Just look at it. Thursday of this past week, the Yankees won 10-7. If that's any indication of how this series will probably go again. And then the other one I picked, we're going all the way to next Sunday night. It's the Packers and the Saints. 2 of the best quarterbacks of all time to do it in Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees. The Saints looked really good against the Bucks last week. They play tomorrow night, so I have no indication of the week 2 matchup, but I just think a week from now, their week 3 matchup will be a better matchup. So Packers Saints, that won't be close. I think the Saints win by maybe a field goal over the Packers. I think it'll be close. I give a field goal win for the Saints. Yeah, that's my
All right, well,
5.
Surprisingly, I did rank mine, so maybe there'll be a time when it matches up, but who knows? But for number 5th, and this is from 5 to 1, 1 being like I think is the best matchup, 5 being again all really good matchups, but 5 being compared to what I have. But 5th is tonight's, or for Sunday night, the game between the Patriots and the Seahawks. I mean, Russell Wilson, arguably one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. The Patriots really, and I don't want to say they surprised but it was just crazy to see how they performed with the new quarterback. I mean, they've pretty much always and I won't not relied on Brady, but when you go from Tom Brady, to Cam Newton, and with the craziness, with what happened to Cam after Carolina. Good to see him. I think you got two really good quarterbacks going at it, and I think it's a great Sunday night matchup. Because it's at Seattle, I know fans aren't really a factor, but I do think Seattle wins that one. I think it's going to be I'm going to go with a score, a touchdown, and a field goal. I think 10. I think it'll be close, but I think Seattle. Yeah, I think so.
10.
That's my guess. I'm getting some college football. Got to throw that in because we're back. It doesn't seem exciting until you hear the rankings, at least right now in college football. It's number 23, University of Kentucky, taking on number 8, Auburn. Two schools, with the playing each other in the conference. You don't really see Kentucky that much in terms of rankings, so they're gonna try to hold on to that. But in terms of score, the only thing I know is I think Auburn does win that. But it's a good rivalry, a good game for those two schools, and I think it will generate a little bit of excitement. But I think Auburn is they've been a really good program the last couple of years, and I think they'll pull out the win.
Sure.
MLB, for my number 3 spot, I have the Cubs at the Pirates. In particular, because with the Cubs, once they finish up with the Twins, that's their last time. They'll be at Wrigley, depending on how the postseason goes, because then they'll take on the Pirates and then finish off against the Chicago White Sox. But I think this series is important because this could be a big just week in general, but Cubs Pirates, because it's the upcoming road match. I think this could be a week that they try to clinch. Only one National League team has clinched, and that's the LA Dodgers. But I think this could be a good opportunity for them. And we talked about this back in the LA. The Pirates not one of the stronger teams in baseball right now, so the Cubs need to capitalize this upcoming road trip to potentially clinch and officially guarantee that they'll make the playoffs. I'll just say my 2 and 1 are the two, the Eastern and Western Conference, but my second are the Lakers and Nuggets. In particular, tonight's game or within the next couple games. We've seen the Nuggets do it against both the Jazz and the Clippers, but I mean, you're going against a completely different team with two of arguably some of the best players in the NBA, in LeBron and Anthony Davis. And once those two get it going, if they got at least 2 other Lakers team players going, there's almost no stopping that. But I think it's important for the Nuggets for their upcoming game because they'll actually play 2 games before the Celtics and Heat play. So it's important for the Nuggets to try to get some type of momentum going in order to try to make that a series. I'm kind of like you, though. I'm thinking Lakers, and I mean, I won't be surprised if it's a sweep, but I think the Nuggets will snag one, but I'm like you, probably Lakers in 5, at most 6, but I'm like you. I'm thinking Lakers in 5. And then I think the most important matchup is Boston-Miami, and this game 4 especially. I won't say if Miami wins, that's the end of it, but Boston, this is a must-win for them to keep that series even and go to 6. I'm still confident in Boston. I think that game 2 loss has really fueled them. I think Gordon Hayward did some really good things. Didn't really do a lot of scoring, but he passed the ball really well. And just his presence in another body was great. And Jaylen Brown was absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
I honestly would say he's one of the most underrated players in terms of underappreciated for not just the Celtics, but even in the NBA. So that matchup, I think, is the most important for the Celtics and for the Heat to try to bounce back. I'm going Boston, but I think it's in 7. I think Boston will ride some momentum. The Heat will come back. Okay. But those are my 5 matchups. A really good upcoming week for sports, especially we talked about, especially in football for next Sunday. There's going to be some really good matchups.
Yeah, there's some good matchups.
So really exciting, and obviously to keep an eye on for all of these upcoming matchups. Well, that's all that we have for you today. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Beyond the Stats. So give us a follow, leave us any feedback. We would really appreciate it. Beyond the Stats is also on most podcasting sites. So again, leave us some feedback. Most appreciated. We are also on YouTube as well. So be sure that you like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our new episodes. We love getting to do this, getting to talk some sports, especially with a lot of them coming back now. So again, any support would be much appreciated. I can speak for the both of us.
Yeah, I have to agree with that wholeheartedly. We love doing this, and we hope you enjoy the content we create. For Zachariah Begley and Tanner Camp, till next time, this is Beyond the Stats.